having been the last generation, and I don't think I'm going to sound very old, but we are the last generation that grew up without a smartphone, right?
Yep.
So we were forced to actually understand what it was like to grow up offline and then understand the power of online and kind of live with this dichotomy, which is it doesn't exist today, right? Like I don't know what's going to happen when, I mean, you're about to have kids. So it's like, I think that's interesting. And you think about being a father and what's the role of technology
100%.
will play in your kid's life. Because for me, if you look at how it can, you see sometimes these parents that are using tech to just quiet their babies, but they're not doing the work. So it's almost as if they're taking this childhood shortcut that we took in order to like accelerate or diminish our social awkwardness and become, legit humans. But then just being lazy parents, putting an iPad there and then leaving the kid, like, okay, you're going to stop crying. And I wonder what that will look like in a few years. But
yeah, no, it's something my wife and I are already worrying about. And it's interesting because it does feel like a lot of the people I know who work in technology are maybe the most anxious about the impact technology can have on kids, and are maybe often the people that put the most guardrails around technology and kids. And obviously you see a lot of schools in San Francisco where there's like no computers, and it's kind of an interesting dichotomy that the people that are, building tech are often the ones that are most afraid of it.
It's because we know it, right? We know like
good
that
reason.
It's it's like if you think about like even like apps like Robinhood, how are they designed? They're designed to give you precise dopamine hits and get you addicted to it.
Right.
I think you have to use time limits on some social media. I think we've all been there. Like you open up Instagram, everything is so nice and pretty and perfect, and suddenly 2 hours have gone by and you're scrolling your life away. And I mean, they have hundreds. We know this. They have hundreds of thousands of people just to make sure that is the case. I think I'd like to consider that we are somewhat with like have our individual sovereignty and like in a functioning brain, and we still get caught into that loop. So imagine a kid, right? So knowing that for me, totally. I mean, there was even an article in the New York Times talking about how many of like tech workers make actual nannies sign a contract that they're not going to be using their devices when they are with their kids. The parents are not there. Even Spiegel, right, which in my opinion is the most brilliant product genius of our generation, right? He invented all these features that everyone else copied and recreated social media multiple times. And he doesn't allow his kids to use any devices.
Yeah.
So, that tells you something, right?
It does. Yeah, no, it's interesting to think about what technology looked like when we were kids and what it looks like now, right? Because I think about dial-up internet and like the pain of trying to access the internet and having to negotiate with my mom when we wouldn't be able to use our landline phone. And then you get online and, instant messenger was like where I would be spending all my time, but like instant messenger is just text box and you're talking to people, and like we would have conversations amongst our friends, and sure, we were talking about Pokemon or whatever, but the point is it was engagement, right? And then it was, exploration of like, what could this desktop computer do? And so you play with, Microsoft Paint, and you maybe are poking around on like eBaum's World or different like little websites, but it does feel like, looking back on it, it was exploration and creation, not just consumption that's drip fed to you in sort of a perfect, as you said, like, micro doses of dopamine to keep you addicted. Maybe I'm looking at it with rose tinted glasses, but I do look back at my the way I engaged with technology as a kid and felt like it was more positive than maybe what, the give the kid the iPad and get him to shut up experience looks like.
That's
today.
right. I also think that we had the privilege of having, massive step functions of evolution across, the spectrum of stack, right? Like a technology. That includes the penetration of broadband, the fact that we started only, it was a desktop thing, so you were stuck with your Mac or your PC. They were all wired in. Then you have your first laptop, and that kind of feels magical. And you had, your dumb phone. Then you get a smartphone that isn't that great, a Palm Treo or a Nokia. And then the iPhone comes out, and then you have these, and then the App Store comes out. So I think we've observed all of that today. You were born, and I mean, the ecosystem is there. at full pace, full speed, and how do you digest that? One of the themes that I would love to back is full stack, like stalling parental control, basically. Because in terms of like a framework for life, I think Nassim Taleb summarizes in a really good way. In your family, you want to be a communist. With your friends, you want to be a socialist. At the municipal level, you want to be a Democrat. And then at the state level, Republican, federal, libertarian. That I think is like a very good summarization of how you should live your life. And whenever I have kids, I want full control of the Wi-Fi, of the network, of like everything that they're doing, their devices, just to at least provide them the opportunity to think for themselves, but understand what they're being programmed into, right? Because that's a danger. That is my biggest fear, is that they start being, defending ideas that that I think are fundamentally wrong.
Yeah. I think certainly when they're like kids, right? Having a really clear understanding and control over what they're consuming is at least knowing. By the way, saying all this as someone who's still kid is on the way in 3 months, that feels like the right philosophy. One of the quotes that I am blanking. It's the founder of Red Sea Ventures, but I heard him on a podcast a ways back that I just thought was so great. Was tug of war raising kids is a game of tug of war that you'll ultimately have to lose.
Yes,
and
it's a good one.
As a infant and as a toddler and as a young child, definitely having a tight amount of control, and then having mentors and friends who have kids who are teenagers. How much control can you really exert without stifling them? And it's so scary, right? Because especially as you get into teenage years, like bullying is something that cyberbullying is such a real thing and a really scary one, and you want to protect them from that. And yet I also remember feeling like my parents were too controlling at times when I was a teenager, and that I needed to have more freedom. And it's a ton of questions. The only thing I know about parenting is that there's so many things I don't know that I'm gonna have to learn. So
yes,
it's funny, this isn't what I thought we'd be talking about, but I'm glad that we are.
See, this podcast is different. It's long format. We'll talk plenty of venture. It's no problem, not a problem. But
I'm not in a rush.
That's the I don't know how I'm going to do that. I'm glad that you as a friend will have a kid in 3 months, and congratulations for that, by the way.
Thank you.
Then I can ask. But yeah, I would love and all the startups in this space that I've seen. The issue though is that it's really tough for you to have full stack control, because ultimately, you assume that your kid will be more tech savvy than you 100% by the time that you're like, I don't know, thinking that something because you have some sort of like a VPN, or you created a private mesh network for him. He'll be already streaming, I don't know, having his own Twitch channel, and he bought a phone already without your consent, and through if he's a resourceful kid, they'll find a way. So ultimately, it's probably you want to be very, very good at and a very present parent before puberty hits, and then when that hits, that's when you start losing the tug of war, maybe, and you hold and you let go of the rope when they're 18. Probably that's right. If I had to think about it, but